would be to hit the end live and then make a new like stream link. But then in this one, just say like in the chat, like, hey guys, something went wrong with the stream link. So there's going to be a new stream link posted in the next like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And that way people can click over to that one when it pops up.
That's a good idea.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that was a really good idea. Really good idea.
You know what? I'm gonna smoke to that, man. You're a fucking genius.
Oh wait, here we go. Here we go. Hello,
are we
people.
live? Oh, people.
We are live. Welcome to Chronic Combat Conversations. Oh my goodness. So we hit the live button at least 4 or 5 minutes ago. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chronic Combat Conversations, a live look at our best bets, picks, and predictions for every UFC event with your host, TV Scouting MMA, and
the Guru back again. We are here for Abu Dhabi. Unbelievable card. We've got a title, a contender eliminator over at bantamweight. You've got Corey Sandhagen taking on Umar Nurmagomedov, and in your co-main event, you've got Shara Bullet Magomedov taking on Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Guaranteed banger, guaranteed stand-up fight. Somebody's going down. I can't wait to see it. But before we could get into this pay-per-view level of a card, we had to bring in one of the best guests that MMA Twitter has to offer, right? Make sure you're following Liam Picks Fights over on YouTube, over on Twitter. He's got his First Look show, and he's got his Best Bants, the Banter show, with the king of banter himself, Just Win Baby. So if you're missing that, that's some quality content right there that you're just really missing out on. So before we get into some more quality content, Liam, the fuck's good, man?
What's up, brother? Happy to be here. Happy that we're live now on YouTube. If anybody was here for the pre-show, y'all are legends forever. But it seems like we're ready to rock and roll. I think we got a good card, some interesting action, and I'm excited to break it all down with you guys.
Hell yeah.
We're doubly excited. We just did this twice, but luckily these boys noticed right away. So fixed it all up. Cheers to you guys. You know what? Shit. You know what? Hell yeah. You know what?
Hell yeah. Cheers to the chat, baby. Oh, Guru's getting it popping. If you guys
got
got a little something, come on, do your thing. Drank it. He's smoking. But what's up to the chat? Shout out to all you amazing people joining us live now. Mushroom, I'm going to try to count if you gave any more exclamation points to any of us to see if there's any favoritism, but appreciate you so much. Kiwi, the lone not subscriber, but member of the Chronic Combat YouTube channel. Thank you so much to our amazing member, Kiwi Brew. Shout out to you always. You're the man. Then we are finally live. We had a little issue when we hit the live. Daz, that's right. We always got the best guests, of course. We got Liam, and this should be great, man. Yeah, this card does. It looks pretty solid. I think that there's a lot better matchups than some of the ones that we saw last week. What's going on? And yeah, this should be a great show. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Make sure you're letting us know your best bets in the chat as we go through. If you haven't done so already, hit the like button, please. It helps us out so much. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So close to 700. Maybe you could be the one that gets us over the hump to that 700 mark. It would be a magical experience. What the prize would be, that's to be determined. But we gave you Bilal Muhammad last week. That should be good enough, right? So come on down, friends.
And we gave more than Bilal Muhammad last week. We gave a few of those. We gave a few of those doggies out, didn't we?
Yeah, big time doggy action on the show. Oh, God, but I probably shouldn't put it that way. So, anyways, let's get into this fight here. We've got Corey Enter Sandman Sandhagen versus cousin Umar Nurmagomedov. This fight should be absolutely incredible. It's the best type of Guru fight to break down. It's the title contender eliminator. This one's for real. I don't see how you deny either guy if they come out with the victory in this matchup. Umar taking a huge step up in the rankings and in level of competition. Sandhagen taking on the toughest guy no matter the ranking. I really shout out to both guys here. They were supposed to fight at an earlier date. Sandhagen, he had to pull out though, right? So Umar pulled out of the fight originally, and then Sandhagen had to get tricep surgery after his fight. So this matchup has been a long time coming here. Ultimately, in Abu Dhabi, We're seeing Sandhagen coming over. And the biggest question for me in this fight is I really like what I've seen offensively from Sandhagen in every department. And I do think his defensive striking has improved solidly. The question is, what type of leaps and bounds has his defensive grappling and avoidance of giving up the back? I don't think TJ Dillashaw had the tools to really wrap up a body triangle and get long periods of control. He was more of a wrestler type of back take and playing around. And, I feel like ultimately Corey Sandhagen, if you give up the back here continuously to a guy like Umar, who probably isn't going to want to spend too much time at distance here. I mean, if you look at the Amakan fight, it's clear that when he understands that there's any type of danger on the feet, that's when he activates grappling mode. In fact, kind of looking at his regional tape, we thought he was like not that kind of Nurmagomedov, but it's really just because he has a bit more flashiness on the feet, but that wrestling and grappling background is still there. I think clearly that, the value type of play for me would be to look at a Nurmagomedov submission, given the amount of times that Sandhagen's going to expose his back and the fact that Umar should probably be going to that type of game plan, father's plan. There's no messing around when it comes to the importance of these matchups. Minus 325, not quite tickling the pickle because, Corey Sandhagen probably is the most talented plus 260 that you could find on this card. Like, he's the best level of fighter. It's just a stylistic matchup here and the ability for Umar to have success on the feet and getting the back takes and body triangle. I think that's where Sandhagen could have a bit of trouble. So I'll lean towards the sub, but man, I'm having a tough time really pulling the trigger so far. Like, Guru, what do you got cooking here, man? Shout out to the chat.
Yeah, I wish I had the chat, except for I'll shout you out anyway. Shout out for There Will Be Blood, man. But we do not tolerate any Nate Maness slander on this podcast at all. Nate Maness is the boy. That fight, he tried to stay safe and played defensive. And then in the Tajir fight, he's like, I'm not going to spend all that time there and got subbed quickly. Some of the best Dagestani wrestlers you're ever going to face, man. That's no knock on Nate for that. In this fight, though, I just feel that Corey Sandhagen is somebody that's like, God, first, I'd love to hang out with this guy, smoke a joint, have a beer with him. He just seems like a really cool guy. But he's just somebody that inside the cage, right? He hasn't always shown the best fight IQ. The fight that really sticks in my craw, and especially just for this fight, is the TJ Dillashaw fight. Giving up control to TJ, losing those rounds to TJ, and injured TJ. TJ off the couch, not off the couch, but had spent a ton of time recovering and not in the cage. It's just not necessarily the best look. And then you look at his subsequent wins after the Peter Yan loss. And in all three of those fights, Song Yadong, Marlon Vera, and especially the Rob Font fight, he uses his offensive grappling to kind of make up for wherever his striking is failing him, for whatever reason, whether his tricep fell off his shoulder or, whatever the reason is, he's used it and he's used it well. But in this fight, that's not an option, right? You're not going to be able to go to that well at all. And the other thing that sticks in my mind is the Aljamain Sterling just complete backpacking and dismantling. And then you look at the Sunsao fight, he gives up 3 or 4 takedowns to a Sunsao. It just seems like a consistent hole. And then on the other side with Umar, he's obviously, again, like you said it perfectly with him getting rocked in the last fight, but then immediately resorting to high-level grappling like his life depended on it. That's kind of what you want to see. You want to see somebody tested. And I don't care what anybody says about Beksad. I think he's near top 15 caliber fighter. Like, he's good. Like, I don't care what anybody has to say. So while Umar hasn't necessarily fought the highest level of competition, they've held him on ice for over a year for a reason. You know what I mean? Or nearly. Other than the Beksad fight. So they give him that fight, and this is a tailor-made matchup. And Corey Sandhagen's just the kind of fighter that's just going to take it anyway, because I don't know if he's got the best management or whatever, but he I guess he thinks he can beat this guy, which I love. You got to think you can beat him. But where I'm going with this is the fight going the distance here, I think, is mispriced. I just feel like Corey Sandhagen's path is really going to be knocking this dude out with a freak knockout the way that he likes to do it. or I think that eventually that Umar's going to find the sub. I honestly think it happens sooner over than later. Otherwise, yeah, I guess it's just a blanket decision, like where he just lays on top of him. But I don't see Corey going out like that. So I'm going to go Umar by sub. I was really thinking the sub grouping of the 1, 2, 3, but something telling me to go like the 2, 3, 4. Either way, you're getting a very high number. I'm looking at either plus 430 for 1, 2, 3 or plus 600 for 2, 3, 4 submission grouping over on FanDuel. So I like both of those in this fight. What do you think, Liam? It's been a lot of deliberating here.
Yeah, it's another fight where I don't think this is an easy call to make, right? I think that on the Umar side, you're being asked to pay a lot for potential here. He's got very good skills. You could see that. The Beksat fight I thought was a very good look. I think Beksat's a good fighter. I don't think there's going to be, another guy for a long time who's minus 1,200 against him in the UFC. And I think that when you have a big minus 1,000 type favorite, I've always said before, they need to be able to get hit with a potentially fight-ending shot and still win the fight to justify that kind of price. And we've seen that before. Think of a guy like Neto BJJ rocking Arman Sarukian. Arman was minus 1,000. He got rocked so bad in that fight, shot a takedown, and he was easily back on top, chilling and like working his way back into the fight. And that's kind of what we saw from Umar last time. But frankly, we don't know how to evaluate Beksat. Like, he's had some fights in weird mixed rules contests. He's a good fighter. You could tell that. But can you tell how good he is? Could he beat Corey Sandhagen? I mean, I think that's an open question, right? And I think Corey has proven he's willing to go out there against the top guys. He's willing to go out there and fight them. And honestly, I think the TJ Dillashaw fight's a fight that could have been scored either way. I thought it was a very close fight. I thought he made some bad decisions there. And I think some things about the Apex Center as well, the small octagon, probably contributed to that. He was easily pushed into the fence in those negative control positions, and he was a little bit too I'm trying to think of the right word. He basically just settled, right? He was just sitting in those positions for too long. He was letting too much of the fight pass him by in negative positions. And I think that Umar has shown he can get to those good positions, but let's not forget, Beksat was able to get up from the bottom many, many times. And I was kind of surprised by that, honestly. And Beksat, a lot of it was physicality. He was just going, nah, just get off me, get back to the feet type stuff. But there was also times where just like Umar would get aggressive, like sit up and go to throw big shots and just like create a lot of space for somebody to get out. Corey is a very smart fighter. I do think that's true about him. And what I noticed is he talks about I think I could beat this guy because he's going to be huffing and puffing later on in the fight. And I saw that in his last fight. He's like, he gets tired from dominating these rounds. And I'm just thinking to myself, Corey does train at altitude. If you're trying to make the case for how he could win the fight, trains at altitude. He's been around for a long time. He's had a bunch of 5-round fights, and he's kind of shown he can win rounds 4 and 5. The thing for me that is not bullish on Corey is a lot of these recent fights, he's had to rely on his own offensive wrestling and grappling. I think that would be a mistake here against Umar. We saw Beksat land a good shot on the feet. He gets close to him in the wrestling, and then he's instantly sat on his butt and getting past and getting his guard exploited. And I do think that Corey is not physically strong like Umar. Umar is a guy who's freakishly strong on top. When he grabs a hold of people, they get stuck to the floor. He's able to pass the guard. He's able to beat them up. But I just think that we haven't seen him tested over a long 5-round fight yet. And I don't think that I'm as bullish on the submission as you guys if I had to differentiate, because I think you guys covered a lot of the analysis. But the one thing I would say is just when you're out there and you have a bunch of rounds and minutes against Beksat, against Nate Maness, and you're not getting the finish, it doesn't tell me you're a bad grappler or anything like that. It just tells me you're more concerned about controlling the positions, about staying dominant on top. And the one thing I like about Umar is he's not a guy who's going to ever say, I'm not going to take this good position. Every time it's about the position. Every time it's about, I can't give up this takedown. I need to get back on top. But there are just a few things about his striking that make me worried that an extended fight on the feet, if he's not having success with the takedowns, if he's struggling to track Corey with the footwork, Corey has shown he can intercept people with that flying knee. He's done it to a number of opponents. And unlike Becksatt, when Becksatt would hit the ground, this guy was just going like, I need to get back to my feet or the fight's over. And Corey is actually a more sophisticated ground player. Do I think he's going to submit him off his back? Goodness, no. But do I think that he can do some damage off of his back and make it a little bit harder to hold him down if you want to play from the full guard and try and be conservative like that? I actually do. And Corey's kind of shown that a little bit over the course of his career. So the problem is, and the ultimate reason I have to favor Nurmagomedov here, you think back to the Yuri Alcantara fight. He showed the heart of a warrior. He showed all the willingness to go through pain and suffering to get the win. But he almost got submitted by Yuri Alcantara in the first 60 seconds. He got submitted by Aljamain Sterling instantly, right, when they fought. And by the way, that fight closed to pick him. Everybody said, hey, what if this fight plays out on the feet? And it played out on the feet for like 11 seconds, and then it was over. And when you look back at his other fights, we've seen other guys get to that same rear standing position. He hasn't fully addressed that yet. So he's a smart guy. He's fully aware of the assignment here. He knows this guy is going to be comfortable in a fight that takes place in grappling, and he's going to be fundamentally uncomfortable in a fight that takes place on the feet. He's not dead to rights there, but he's not going to be comfortable like Corey. And the one thing about Corey is his offense on the feet is very diverse. Spinning head kicks, flying knees, uppercuts, straight punches. He's linear. He's circular. He uses his footwork. He's a very tricky, clever guy. If Umar gets extended on the feet with this guy, he could easily get exposed, but I don't foresee that happening. So I favor Umar here, but not as bullish as the odds makers. I'd probably make him, minus 200 favorite. So I think there's slight value on Corey Sandhagen here, but I haven't gotten to the window because I think, number one, there's probably a lot of scenarios where you get a better line on Corey Sandhagen after the first round. I think that Umar in round one is most likely to win via submission in that round. If he wins via submission, I don't think it's going to be because Corey got tired and broke. Maybe that happens. That would be hats off to Umar. But Corey doesn't seem like a guy who's going to be like, I fold down the stretch. It seems more like, you catch me early when we're both dry and you're more technical. That's how you get him out of there. Aljamain did it, choked him out. I always say you could be a tough guy all you want. That's why that armbar from Yuri was a bad idea. You can't tough guy, a choke. You just go to sleep like everybody else. And there's a chance that he goes to sleep early on Saturday.
Hell yeah. I love that.
Definitely. Love it.
I do think more often than not, though, it's a decision for Umar personally, because I think that I respect Corey enough to say he's not going to give it up easy, knowing that the rear naked choke is the assignment here. But yeah. I do think we've seen it enough to say you can't rule it out as a possibility when they're both dry.
To the point of everything you said, and I think it kind of encapsulates it in my sub groupings where I gave them. It's like, if this is going and the start of round 4, like he could be up 3-0, he could be 2-1. I don't care. Like, I'm nervous because I'm concerned. I would certainly be concerned about his cardio. We just for the simple fact that we have not seen it. But I think it's even tough for the judges to give Sandhagen a win here in Abu Dhabi, right? I don't want to get to the hometown cooking too much, but in any event, it's time to move on, TV.
I would say so. We got the movie star of them all, Shara Bullet Magomedov, versus Michal Husar, the artist formerly known as Lord, Oleksiejczuk. I thought Lord was better. I don't know. We can get into the semantics, but ultimately, minus 245 on Shara Bullet versus, Michal, I'm flying across the world, Oleksiejczuk at plus 200. Last seen on the streets of Newark, taking pictures with the fine young gentleman of that area before his latest fight. Next training out of his garage. And here we are coming down to Abu Dhabi just in time for a guy that they flew over and made an exceptional visa for to film some movie as a villain in the United States. From UPS driver to your octagon, it's Shara Bullet. So ultimately, how does this fight play out? I think the kickboxing is going to give Shara enough distance here to stay safe. He's not the best fighter overall, but Michal is purely, you have to be afraid of round 1 knockout, boxing combinations, forward pressure. So if you have the use of body shots, which I think the kicks to the body and the teeps up the middle from Shara, plus the weird spinning stuff that he's liable to pull out at any second, and the fact that he doesn't have to worry about the wrestling threat in this fight, he should be able to just take care of business here versus Oleksiejczuk. But if you were nervous, you had some money out on Shara, maybe in we're coming for the bag type of parlay, I think the way to hedge out of that would be Michal by round 1 knockout at like plus. It's got to be like plus 1,000, whatever.
I'll get it for you because you smell bad. He's round 1 knockout for him is wow, it's plus 1,000 exactly, you weirdo.
That was actually disgusting because I was like projecting what it might be, and it's worth it because all you have to do, say you have like, if you have a unit out on Shara,
I wouldn't do it. I don't think there's a point. I mean, like it's basically what I did with Crosby last week, and I played the stupid round 1 knockout. Yes, it's his only win condition, but he's not gonna fucking do it. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, I just think he's done. Even before that screenshot of whatever IG stuff with him circulated, right, with like him being done. I mean, I've been fading him ever since. Wasn't he like pick him versus Michel Pereira? Like I had to listen to that nonsense. Yeah, like he's pick him versus Michel Pereira, and then he was same idea, sizable underdog to Kevin Holland, and I had to listen to people telling me that he's gonna knock out Kevin Holland. Like it's just not gonna happen.
Well,
the difference,
he gave him a little dustiness. He did
because Kevin Holland's a silly little boy, but he still finished him in 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Fair enough.
Make no mistake.
Oh wait, how long ago was that his elbow was popping out of its socket?
Yeah,
now it might not be fractured, but his elbow was popping out of its socket.
I legitimately thought he had a broken arm. Like we were all freaking out. He was also asleep, wasn't he? Like, wasn't that also part of it?
No.
No, he wasn't asleep. That was the other. No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a different fight.
It's
I'm thinking of Bobby Green.
Robert?
I'm thinking of Bobby fight. Yeah.
Thinking of Robert.
The King Green fight. Yeah. So I just feel like they gave Oleksiejczuk this fight, or they should say gave Shara this fight specifically because Oleksiejczuk is a stand and bang type of fighter. He's gonna give if they don't want to see Shara grapple fucked here, that would be boring, and then they'd have to bury a UFC fighter out in the middle of the desert because the Emperor is going to get to him. But I think Shara Bullock gets it done. The weird part is Mikhail loves to get finished by submission, has only been knocked out 1 time, and that was a long time ago. So be very interesting to see Shara do it. It would be even funnier to watch him win a decision. I kind of like round 3 decision because he's already shown it against Bruno Silva and Tricali that he's just not necessarily like this immediate killer. At the same time, you really have to trust Mikhail Oleksiejczuk for 10 minutes, and he hasn't fought for 10 minutes in a very long time. So I don't really like that either. I just like Shara by fucking knockout at the end of the day. That's what I'm going to go with. What do you like, Mr. Liam?
So I don't love this fight. Reason being, I think Shara is fugazi. I tweeted that after his last fight. I think he's fraudulent, and I do think he is waiting to be exposed one day. But the whole problem is he's much more marketable than a guy like Oleksiejczuk. I think he's better for the region. And when you look, there are, first of all, in fact, before I talk about Shara at all, let's first talk about Michal Oleksiejczuk because he's been lost in a lot of the breakdowns this week. Obviously, Shara is the A side of this fight. But when you look at Oleksiejczuk, he does fit one system criteria for me. He's a younger fighter. Technically, he's 29, I believe, with more professional and UFC experience. So he's been around for a long time. He fought at light heavyweight. He's now the smaller guy at middleweight. That shows you how undersized he was. He was still getting some wins in the light heavyweight division. So he's a guy that's not afraid of a big guy, right? We know that about him. He's willing to go take on these guys. And he's not a guy that's been finished with strikes a lot. So that's the bullish case for him. It's like, hey, maybe he can go mix it up out there with somebody else that wants to strike. And it's been his grappling that's been his ultimate liability. 75% of his losses in his career via submission. So I have said a million times, like if somebody knows how to grapple, they're going to submit Oleksiejczuk. He's just fraudulent. Unfortunately, before the Michel Pereira fight, I said the best bet on this fight is the sub, but I'm going to pass. And then he hits it easily, plus 575. Then the next time I was like, all right, I'm not going to be stupid enough to pass this time. And I took Kevin Holland by sub at like plus 310 or whatever it was. And that looked easy too, in the sense that he got dropped. But once it got to the ground, you just saw levels above was Kevin Holland in the grappling department. And I did think Kevin Holland was a little bit of a liability on the feet, and he got dropped. So when you look at Shara, I don't think he's like lights out on the feet. Like every time out, he's going to own these guys. He does a good job keeping distance with kicks. He does a pretty decent job maintaining range. However, he's not a great boxer. He's a kicker. That's what he likes to do. He likes to be a finesse guy. And finesse guys don't like when you get in their face, punch them to the body, and try and take their head off. And I do think that that's what Oleksiejczuk's going to do. The things that I've seen on social media are enough for me to say I'm passing on this guy, because I had also said before the fight with Pereira, the guy's checked out on his career. I said that back then because he was leaving his camp. He was doing all these things. So right now he's like fighting for his UFC life. So maybe you get a better effort from him, but I haven't seen him training with real camps. I've seen him walk away from a real camp to train with his friends in his garage. And that just seems like a bad idea if you want to be a pro athlete. And one guy's talking about retirement. The other guy's talking about big opportunities and movies. And I could fight in the States. I'll come prove it with the commissions. So seems like he's more serious, but ultimately I can't trust Shara Bullet because he doesn't have the grappling upside that I would need to think somebody should be a huge favorite over Oleksiejczuk. I think that this is the most likely he's ever been to submit an opponent because Oleksiejczuk gets two arms around his neck and goes tap, tap, tap. But I also think we saw in the last one, Oleksiejczuk really fought hard for that. He did not even give up when his arm looked mangled. So if you go to a pain lock, these UFC fighters aren't going to tap, bro. In the year 2024, unless you have their arm dead to rights and it's going to break in half, these guys aren't tapping. It's just not happening. So something to keep in the back of your mind. I like people that go for chokes. Systematic chokers win fights more often than guys that are looking for arm bars and shit that's low percentage. So for me, Shara's lack of grappling, I'm out.
You guys aren't writing this stuff down from Liam. I'm telling you. That's systematic chokers. I mean, this is metagame stuff. This is next level. This is beneath the surface. Yeah.
This is Shara Bullet. What now? Could you imagine a world where, because Makal only really loses by finish by the submission, that we could see a Shara decision at plus 350 occur in our lifetime? Or are we just like,
I don't know. I mean, my question in terms of Oleksiejczuk is like, what was the last fighter you've seen lose 2 fights in the first quarter of a year in the first round and then get immediately booked again before the third quarter is even? Like, it's the activity rate is to the point that it looks like he wants to make as much money as quick as possible, and they're like, sure, let's just fill out your contract really fast. Like, we both understand what's happening right now. It's really weird. No?
I agree, and that's why he's one of 2 legs in the we're coming for this bag parlay this week. If you follow us on social media, it's disgusting.
And they took a selfie together. Please tell me it's in this. Tell me it's in the fucking presentation.
It's not actually.
What's wrong with you?
I was gonna pull it up and then like share the screen at one point when we got to Dumas. So, but it's not part of like the actual slideshow.
All right, I forgive you as long as you had it on tap.
Yeah, no. I'll get that.
And in terms of not busting your balls,
okay,
I didn't even say anything about your 2 made-up nicknames for the main event. I didn't mind them.
They weren't too bad, right?
They were not terrible.
I gave a little bit of effort. I would put it that way. Like,
Cousin was kind of funny. I was like, okay, whatever, it's fine.
All right.
Okay.
And Enter Sandman. I mean, like,
I was like, man, it's fine.
Whatever. I think Corey listens to Metallica probably.
It's funny. It's okay. We're gonna.
It does the job. Marlon Cheeto Vera versus the God of War, Teixeira, Davison Figueiredo. Wow, this is an awesome fight. You could have thrown this bad boy as like main card, co-main event of like a UFC Brazil type of vibe. But here we are in Abu Dhabi, and I think it's because we got some violence on our hands, folks. And man, the deliverance of it could be some Cheeto Vera with the boxing. It could be Figueiredo with the crazy overhands and the calf kicks and the dangerous submissions. But I think no matter what, we should have a good fight on our hands here. And the over 2.5 at minus 298 tells you all you need to know what the books figure about the durability of these 2 guys. It's just, I think Vera's is a little bit more proven in that regard. So interestingly enough, I feel like if the books are projecting this fight to go the distance, the guy I've seen, take it and give it back a little bit better is a guy like Cheeto Vera, and Figueiredo. He hasn't really had to fight a real 135er to this stage. And I think that this might be, a little bit tougher than he might imagine. Sean O'Malley definitely had like the perfect game plan for dealing like a guy like Cheeto, and Corey Sandhagen mixing up the offensive wrestling and the extremely diverse striking game plan, I mean, you got to love it. But ladies and gentlemen, a shout out Mr. John Newquist, member number 2 of the Chronic Combat family, along with our boy Kiwi Brew. We
Appreciate
appreciate
that,
you
John.
so much.
That's awesome.
All good,
dude.
brother. Appreciate you making it, man. You're the dude. Appreciate all you do supporting our content all throughout X and here on YouTube as well. So if you guys haven't done the right thing and thrown the like or subscribe, all the free options, go ahead and do that. Or you could be really cool like John, you know what I mean? And Mr. Kiwi. So anyways, another way we're trying to get paid here is a little Marlon Vera. And I think that if you're playing Cheeto round 3 decision, Cheeto and over 1.5, I think that there's a way to add more meat to the bones if you feel like you need it. But Guru, what did we do this week, my friend?
What did we do this week? We played Cheeto early, didn't we?
Yeah. What line did you get? I think you got the better one than I did.
I don't want to be like a jerk off. I mean, I think I got like plus 140, maybe 140 and change. I'm happy with it. I mean, to me, this fight is just classic bananas. You've got, Davison, who kind of starts quick, and you got Marlon who's pours it on late. You've got, a guy in Figgy who's gone 5 rounds a lot, and you've got Cheeto, who's a guy that's kind of new to the 5 rounds. You've got a guy that's new to the division in Figueiredo. I just think that I agree with the books at the end of the day that I think the fight's going the distance. So when I feel like the fight's going the distance, and it's going to be a close fight, it's close fight statistically. Marlon Vera is the bigger guy. When you mention Corey Sandhagen and Sean O'Malley, what's the difference between them and Davis and Figueiredo? I mean, those guys are both fucking long, lanky noodles, and Davis and Figueiredo is not. I mean, he's got a ton of power, but again, one of the reasons why we loved him versus Garbrandt is because he's been using grappling and starting to use the grappling, which again could be a very interesting wrinkle here. Marlon Vera not always with the best takedown defense or urgency in terms of get-up game. So, but again, it's about the size and activity and getting there. And I kind of just, like I said, in a fight that I expect to go the distance, I'm going to take the dog shot. But this is about as tough and confusing of a fight to me as you can have. Liam, maybe you can help me and the audience get some clarity here.
Listen, I think the reason why Figueiredo is favored is also the same reason why they're favoring the fight to go over, which is I think they expect him to wrestle. I think they expect him to grapple. I think they expect him to try and put Cheeto on the ground. And if you look at Cheeto's game, historically, he's a very dangerous guard player. He's got elbows from his back. He throws up submission attempts and all that stuff. But that typically works against a certain level of opponent, and then it just falls off a cliff in terms of its efficacy. Against the best guys who see that stuff come in, they can feel it, they can roll with it, they can defend it, they can move past it, like bump it off the shoulder, past the guard. You throw up a triangle attempt against somebody you're better than, you might get the triangle. You throw it up against somebody you're worse than, they pass your guard. So it's like it's a risk-reward type of situation. And I think for Cheeto, his last fight out was a brutal beatdown. And it's always a question mark for me how somebody's going to come back from that. Took a ton of damage, can affect your confidence. He's a guy known for his durability. Is that going to hold up the same way after, he went through that kind of war? I don't know personally. So I don't think Figueiredo is necessarily going to test that. I think, honestly, he's got a different approach for this, which is the Jose Aldo approach. And that's the one name you guys were talking about, some of the more recent setbacks for Cheeto, which were the long, lanky striker types. But Jose Aldo, I thought it was one of his best, most savvy performances, probably because I bet on him, right? So obviously I have these, hindsight fond memories. But when you look back, I bet Aldo is a favorite there because I thought he had championship medal, championship experience, and he knew how to win. And when you look at the first round, he wins the first round. He's a better striker when they're both really fresh, and Cheeto's known to give away that first round sometimes. So if Cheeto's going to give away a round one, all right, now there's only 2 rounds to work with. And he came out in round 2 storming on Jose Aldo. He was landing good shots. He was beating his ass. And I was like, oh, my God, this is about to go so sideways for Jose Aldo unless he changes something right now. And I was scared going into the corner for round 3. And what changed is Jose Aldo said, you know what, F all this. Screw this, young man. He said, get over here, wrapped him up, grabbed a hold of him, body triangle, fell back with it. That's the end of the fight. The fight literally ended as soon as he did that. Cheeto is looking at his corner. He's looking at the ref. He's yelling at everybody. He's like holding the wrist. And there was just not a damn thing he could do about it. And Jose Aldo, guys, has no career wins by submission. I think one in like his first fight ever. He's a great grappler. He's like the most unheralded grappler in MMA because he never submitted anybody. But look at all the guys he fought that didn't submit him. And look at all the guys he fought that couldn't take him down. It's because he's an elite level grappler. He's a BJJ brown belt world champion, as far as I know. So Jose Aldo, legit the goods, but he was able to just get on top of this guy, take his back, and then there's no answer. And if you're looking at Deiveson Figueiredo and you're saying, how do I avoid getting hit by this guy who's going to be angry, who's going to be emotional coming off a loss, he's going to be menacing, wants to come out here and hurt me, what do? I put him on the ground. I put him in uncomfortable positions. I take his back, and he doesn't know how to get out. And I think that is the path for Deiveson Figueiredo. I do not expect him to submit a guy like Chito Vera, who's mentally strong, who stays in the fight for 15 minutes. But I think that the path for him is to go out there, wrestle him, take him down, and submit him. Not submit him, and hold him down in those positions, threaten the sub, just keep him busy. 15 minutes, tick off the clock. Thank you very much. Third straight win in the weight class. And last time out, he saw against, what's his name? Cody. He was like, man, this striking shit ain't all it's cracked up to be. I'm going to take this guy down. And then he audited him. And that's a guy who has a wrestling background. He just had nothing for him in the jiu-jitsu. And Marlon Chito Vera's got good jiu-jitsu, but in the wrestling, does he really have something for Figueiredo? I think that's an open question. And I think that's the upside for Figgy here is the championship experience, a 3-round fight against a guy who's known to give one away. I think it's hard to make him the pre-fight dog as a result of that. Pick him, I understand. If you want to go there, say, hey, this is a more proven bantamweight. I get that line of thinking. But for me, it's hard to favor a guy like Cheeto when we know he's likely to give away one round. And I do not see him having grappling upside against a guy like Dice Duguera.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I get that part of it. My curiosity is the volume perspective of Cheeto. And then you look at a guy like Aldo, someone that fought at 145 successfully. It comes down to 135 and can at least match the size and physicality of Cheeto. And it kind of felt that before. And Cody Garbrandt, I mean, we're talking about a guy that was kind of toasted by that aspect of his career. A win against Boom Kelleher doesn't go quite as far as it used to going into that spot. And you can see where Cody, while he's having success on the feet, like from an athleticism perspective, the guy just doesn't quite look the same as he used to from a reaction perspective. Getting knocked out that many times will do it to you. The hips don't respond quite as well. But to your point, the back takes, they definitely could be there. It could be a certain aspect of the fight. We haven't seen Figgy's cardio really tested in this weight class to this point. I think the volume and the size of Cheeto, man, it could give it to him. So I do understand your perspectives from a grappling perspective, though.
Have we seen Figgy grapple for extended periods as well? Like, I know he subbed Garbrandt in the attempt that he went for because Garbrandt, while having good offensive wrestling, what the fuck do we know about his defensive? It's not whatever. And then, yeah, like, again, right? Like, I mean, he took the grappling to Brandon Moreno, and those fights all blend together. What was that? The third fight that he won? Because I was at the second fight where he got submitted. That's the third fight where he won. Yeah, he used the grappling there, but that was like a couple rounds of it, maybe. And again, different weight class. It's a really tough fight.
Definitely.
Great stuff, Liam. Really, really tough fight.
Oh boy, we've got Tony El Kukui Ferguson versus Michael the Maverick Chiesa. It's not it's just the Maverick here. Sorry. Anyways, Mr. Ferguson is coming in, moving up a weight class here.
Ferguson.
Yeah. Tony Turd. No, I'm sorry, Tony.
No, not talking shit about. Sorry, that was not talking shit about Tony. That was
exactly.
an SNL. That's an SNL reference for anybody that doesn't know.
Norm Macdonald, was it?
Yes.
Yes.
R.I.P.
Okay.
The boy.
All right. Yeah. To the GOAT. All right. Anyways, recircling, Tony Ferguson coming up to meet former 155er Michael Chiesa in the 170 division here. And man, I'm really curious to see what happens. Apparently, Ferguson has been sparring again instead of training with David Goggins. Could be interesting. Michael Chiesa, is he trying to find another way to lose by Darce submission? I mean, that's what I'm trying to find out here. So with Tony Ferguson, I mean, a plus 440. God damn it. It feels like I just have to, just a little nibble, right? Just, just a little something.
What's the worst
just
that can
like,
happen?
yeah, right. Like, I mean, I've done worse, right? I bet Val Woodburn against Oban Elliott, like, I feel like it can't get worse than that, right? So,
That was
I bet
so dumb. I tried
Robelis to
saving from that.
Spain. I bet Robelis to Spain versus Waldo Cortez Acosta at minus money.
How much did you bet? How much did you bet him?
Yeah, I mean, I bet, a nice it's not as big as other people's 5 units, but I definitely bet 5 units on it. So let's go, Tony. Yeah, I agree, Kiwi. I think the title run starts here. Khabib will come out of retirement. No, I'm just kidding. But I think, like, ultimately the question is who has the better volume striking if it goes the distance. Like, if Chiesa is not just sitting on top in 14 minutes and 39 seconds of top control, what does this fight look like as it plays out from distance? And there is the outside chance that Tony could pull off some stupid darce as Chiesa goes to reshoot after getting up kicked to the face or elbowed from bottom. Like, something can happen here that makes it worth my while, right? So I feel like it's worth like the half unit to 1 unit shot. You can win a bunch. And if you're losing a little, and you're doing it for the glory, right? Like, no one wants to play the minus 600 here. So if you were going to, you got to go the prop hunting method. And I feel like the best way to play this fight outside of trying to pick a side, Guru, I feel like you were kind of all over this idea. Like, what would you say you would want to do?
Oh, absolutely. I know what I want to do here. I totally think that this fight goes the distance, like, for sure, because I just, based on the minus 600 line, and if you're taking Michael Chiesa and parlaying him in all your parlays, you better damn well hope that he finishes Tony Ferguson, because the line makes no sense if he doesn't. Because again, like, I know that, and I've been the biggest Tony Ferguson, hate fader to this point, and for a while now, since he lost to probably Charles Oliveira. Like, it's been a long time. But honest to God, look at the lines. And first off, is Michael Chiesa not the worst at this stage in his career? The worst of all those fighters he's lost to? I would say so. I think Paddy Pimblett, I mean, obviously it's a different division, whatever, but like, pound for pound could give Michael Chiesa trouble at this stage right now. But my point is that why is he plus 465 at this point? Like, what has Michael Chiesa done? He's been a systematic disappointment. At this stage, he hasn't won a fight since he cashed us big against Neil Magny in the co-main event on Fight Island. Which, again, maybe he's flying all the way to Abu Dhabi to try to resurrect some wrestling magic here. Would love, good for him. But I just don't trust him at all. And again, minus 600, don't expect to finish. I love the fight to go the distance. I think you can get that at plus money here, plus 106 over on FanDuel. I'm super interested in that. And that's it. I don't expect it at all. I think the sub props are all kind of over talked about and played out. So I just don't expect it. Exactly. And you like that play, Liam? You like the fight to go the distance?
I don't. I'll tell you. And the reason being, I'll always just love with you, right? The reason I don't love that is because I could see, paths to a finish for both guys. And for Michael Chiesa, like, the bullish case for him in this fight is go out there, use your strength, your physicality. He's a little bit more traditional with his grappling. Go out there and use that, leverage that to, get to good positions on Tony, tire him out, and look for the rear naked choke, the submission. We know Chiesa is capable of submitting people. And even in the fights where he loses, he typically gets to some pretty good positions. So he's a capable grappler. I just think the other side of this is that Michael Chiesa is a self-immolator. And what I mean by that is I feel he's a perfectionist. I feel he gets down on himself when he's competing. And so he'll go out there, he'll make a couple of the right decisions, he'll make one wrong decision, fall off the top, lose position, end up in a bad spot. And a lot of people, that happens all the time in fights. They're chaotic, they're crazy. But this guy just finds a way to get in bad positions and not recover and lose the fight. And I think that you credit part of that to, hey, you know, he went against some guys that have good front chokes, right? I think Kevin Holland has a good front choke series. We've seen that in a number of different fights. I think that the same thing can be said of Vicente Luque. He's a Darce choke assassin. But when you look at Tony Ferguson, he's the Darce Knight, right? He's a guy that has a good Darce choke. He's got anacondas, the Mars. He has all these different attacks that he goes for with that same exact series that's caused Chiesa so many problems, from George Masvidal way back in the day. Yes, George Masvidal via submission, to as recently as his last couple of fights. And I think there's some interesting notes here. First and foremost being Michael Chiesa hasn't been favored to win a UFC fight since 2019, and now he's minus 700. Right, the last time he was favored to win a UFC fight, it was the dynamic duo of Diego Sanchez and Joshua Fabia in the other corner. And in this case, Tony Ferguson, for anything you want to say about he's washed, he's past his prime, I'd agree with you on every one of those points. You said Charles Oliveira's name before. Yeah, I was there at the plus 140 mark when everybody still thought Tony was a backable commodity at minus 170. But he's never been this size of an underdog in his career. Michael Chiesa has never been this big of a favorite in his career. Michael Chiesa has a career history of self-immolating. And you look at Tony Ferguson, here's the other thing outside of grappling. I do think physically he's a little bit weak. That's where I'm worried he could just get wrestled and taken down. But I was there at plus 120 when Chiesa was fighting Neil Magny, who's a noodle who can get thrown around physically. And that's exactly what happened. I said it was going to over that course of the 5-round main event. Every striking exchange he's ever in, he looks uncomfortable, and he gets hit with uppercuts routinely. That's what happened against Kevin Holland before he took the shot from half a mile away. He was getting hit with easy uppercuts up the middle. Tony Ferguson throws uppercuts. He throws low kicks. And the thing that's been getting him in his recent fights is low kicks in return. Guys that throw hard low kicks at him, he's old. When you're old, you lose your legs. When you lose your legs, you get hit with low kicks. You're like, holy shit, I can't move no more. So Tony looked like a shell of himself. I don't think Michael Chiesa is a big leg kicker. He's never stopped a fight in his career via strikes. So I'm just thinking to myself, like, I feel like Tony Ferguson could win via more methods than people think. Like, if he hit him with an uppercut and Michael Chiesa chose the easy way out, I just wouldn't be surprised. Chiesa, like I said, hasn't won in, I think, 3 years, hasn't been favored in 5 years. Tony Ferguson, a lot of the same things apply. One of them's a big dog. One of them's a big favorite. It's just an easy dogger pass for me.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. I think that there's a lot of half fake dog shots out there from the ranges of, like, plus 200 to plus 500, you know what I'm saying? But I think basically all three of us have come to the consensus that this is not one of those cases, that there is absolutely value here on Tony Ferguson moneyline. Very cool.
I like it. We've got Mackenzie Dern. My mind blacked out. Couldn't think of a nickname. I mean, come on, look at that. Versus Lupita Godinez. Her sister competing in the Olympics. Shout out to her. Maybe you can see her in the UFC at some point in the future is the rumor. But the question is, what type of Lupi are we going to see in this fight at plus 100 versus the minus 120 Mackenzie Dern? Apparently finishing her camp up back with Perillo again for the last few weeks here. So narratives abound, but my real question is like, well, what type of game plan can you expect from Lupi on a fight-to-fight basis? Like, I feel like Dern, I basically know we're getting someone that is happy to kind of like strike wildly from distance, has, she's willing to eat shots because she lacks defense, but at the same time, it's the pace, the pressure. She has solid cardio. If she gets you on the mat, it's not necessarily that she's finding a submission these days against the higher level opponents, but she's probably going to control out the remainder of the round until they start the next one. So Mackenzie Dern, I really feel like that there's a lot of value in the idea that Lupi Godinez, I can't trust her to fight a safe game plan. Like, you watch the Jessica Penne fight, it's like the one thing that she has to avoid doing is giving up her back and allowing Penne to get into grappling exchanges, and that's what she goes ahead and does. Then you go and see her fight in the last one here against Vina Jandiroba, and it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't be playing leg locks on the ground with a fighter like Vina Jandiroba if you're a fighter like Lupi Godinez. But that's just me. I don't know. So if I could control the controller and tell Lupi, hey, like, you should have the better boxing, stay at distance, dance around, try to land the bigger shots, but she's giving up height and reach here. It's not that Dern knows how to use it. It's just I don't envision there being a real legitimate advantage on the feet from Lupi when she's going to be deathly terrified of giving her back up here on the ground. And it's not that I think that she's getting submitted, But I do think that Dern by decision is a viable look here, and betting Dern at favorite money is not worth it. But if I'm not expecting a finish here, and I think that Dern has a ton of control upside and has a bit of power and the size advantage, I mean, who is the UFC really potentially trying to market here? I mean, if you're thinking about things, it's like, okay, I'm sorry that we gave you to Amanda Lemos and, poor like Jessica Andrade. Like, we're sorry, we're not going to give you gigantic Brazilian power strikers anymore. Here's this little like fighter that just can't figure out the correct game plan, and see how this goes for you, Mackenzie. I feel like she'll be able to control moments like, listen, I mean, the Torres fight, it's arguable how that one plays out, but I think Lupi's a much worse striker than Tecia Torres. And I think Tecia Torres generally has a better game plan than Lupi does. So if we're looking at like body types and how the fight might play out, I'm not trying to do too much MMA math. It's just I think that stylistically Dern is going to have more to offer here from a danger perspective. Like, what does Lupi do that's going to be dangerous here?
I mean, I just think that first off, she hits really hard. So her striking is much better than Mackenzie Dern's. And we've just watched Mackenzie Dern get her block knocked off by Jessica Andrade and probably should have been finished by Lemos, but wasn't. So I'm very concerned about exactly what's up with her durability. You say marketability, but Mackenzie's 31 and Lupi's 30. These are both buildable fighters that I don't think either are in danger.
You think more people are coming to watch Lupi?
I think that they're perfectly fine smashing their toys together and figuring out who's better. I also think that in a fight that I expect to go the distance, once again, I'm just like, give me the dog. I got in, not to line shame anybody, I got in at plus 115 just for a unit because basically it's the same philosophy. It's like, I think it's going to be a close fight. The judges are the people that matter. Who cares? Like, you guys are the best. You guys give awesome technical advice. You know who doesn't matter to? The judges who are picking their nose and smoking crack and scrolling on fucking Facebook. Like they're not even watching the fight. So it's going to be a close fight. So I got the dog, and that's my tech. It's like a system play for me that I've come to. My systems aren't exactly as sophisticated as a guy like Liam's. The choke advocate over here, but I'm trying to get to my spot here, and I think that's where I'm at. Would I be shocked either way? No, not really, because like you said, Lupi makes a ton of mistakes versus all the time, honestly, all the time.
This is pretty good. Dern never had the makings of a varsity athlete. Direct quotation.
I appreciate that, Shady. You're the man.
It's pretty good.
Liam, let's get it done. What do you think?
I think this is a tricky fight. You have on the one hand a Mackenzie Dern, who I thought looked her career best against Angela Hill, a common opponent. Angela Hill beat Lupi Godinez. Then you saw what Mackenzie Dern was able to accomplish, just dropped her multiple times with the hands, also got on top of her and just beat the hell out of her. I had the TKO plus 2,500 and it didn't cash. I wanted to be sick in my hands. But in any case, you look at Lupi and her career, I think she shot herself in the foot a few times in the UFC. There's been many occasions where I felt like she has the skills and the ability to win, and she just comes up short. Verna Jandiroba could have won that fight, blew it. Angela Hill could have won that fight and blew it. Luana Carolina could have won that fight, took it under suboptimal circumstances. We'll make that caveat because I think she took it a week after a different fight in the UFC, but she took it and she lost to somebody she could have beat, so she blew it. And then Jessica Panay lost a split decision there where, again, physically she has every intangible advantage. She was picking her up and power bombing her to the ground in that fight, and she still ended up losing a split decision, giving up her back, giving up a couple of bad spots. I think that people talking about in the comments, she's saying, I'm not afraid to go out there and take down Mackenzie Dern. That would be the stupidest thing you've ever seen, in my humble opinion, because Mackenzie Dern is actually better on the bottom. And I know that sounds weird, but most people aren't like traditional BJJ world champions, right? That's what she is really good at. When she's on bottom, she's more dangerous. She can create sweeps. She can create dynamic submissions. When she's on top, she's not really used to being there. So unless she's in the Angela Hill fight where she's dropping her and she just got divorced and she's trying to beat the crap out of somebody, then most of the time, Mackenzie spends all of the round looking for a submission that she doesn't get because she's just not prolific from the top position. And girls know, if I don't get submitted, I could survive. So they're like this. And if you guys have ever done jiu-jitsu, it's a lot easier to submit somebody who wants to win than somebody who wants to survive. They just don't want to give you anything. All right, well, it's going to be very hard to put them away. And I think that when you're looking at how Loopy should approach this, I don't think she's going to be easy to put away. But for her sake, I think she shouldn't wrestle. She should counter wrestle. She should just sprawl, brawl, keep this fight upright, and punch Mackenzie Dern in the face, because Mackenzie is a magnet for damage. She's just not good at defending herself on the feet. She got boxed up by Amanda Hebos in a fight that people have forgotten about. But when you look at Mackenzie's track record, she is the more dangerous girl on the mat. I do think she's got equal power to Loopy on the feet, truly. But I just think Loopy is a little bit more consistent with her boxing and her offense. The Perillo edition is kind of like a wild card for me. So when I just look at the line, I honestly think it's about accurate. I think it should probably just be minus 110 apiece. When you look at these women, they both have a case to win the fight, but they both have made suboptimal decisions at times. I thought Dern arguably was stopped by Lemos her last fight. She held on. She's tough. She's willing to keep going. She fought her best round maybe in round 3 with a broken face. But I also just think that's not the first time she's been hit really cleanly, and it's happened against low-level strikers as well. So we just know she's there to be hit. Loopy throws very hard. She doesn't stop many people with strikes, but I do think she's going to be landing clean. So for me, it's a very competitive fight. And the problem is there's a world in which Loopy wins easily 10 minutes of this fight, throws one overhand, slips on a banana peel, and then the fight's over. And I'll just tell you, that would be unfortunate if you lay any kind of chalk. So at plus money, I get the upside. But for me, Dern just has a little bit more of that one mistake and the fight's over type thing. And even with Tisha Torres, you made that analogy. Tisha had to spend one round just like clasped hands to not get Kimura. And it's not a pretty round, but it's a Dern round when that happens.
Yep, that's for sure. And I think that there's the pathway to that plus 250, plus 275 Dern decision. That's the most interesting way to play the fight for me. So make sure you guys are doing the right thing. I could see just how many of you have liked, so make sure you go ahead and before I count our chickens over here. But no, seriously, help us get to that 700 subscriber mark and onward. Shout out to our amazing new member of the channel, John Newquist, and other current member of the channel, Mr. Kiwi Russo. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate everyone's support. And we're moving on. We've got El Fenomeno, Joel Alvarez versus Elvis Blue Suede Brener. We got the matchup of a lifetime. It's Elvis, blue suede shoes. Yeah. Blue suede Brener, Get into some alliterations here. Guru doesn't like it, though.
His name's Elves. Isn't his name Elves? It's not Elvis, it's Elves.
It's not Elves. That's very American of you to say. It's Elvis Brener.
Right.
Maybe it's like Elvis, instead of Elvis. Maybe I'm being American.
I just don't think it's Elvis. So I think you could have went with some sort of different angle.
I think it's dealer's choice.
Yes.
I think I think he went to low hanging fruit, and I don't like it.
Wow, unbelievable. All right, well, we needed to get there at some point, but what we also got here is a fantastic matchup in Joel Alvarez, probably a natural 170 or even 185, or currently fighting his way down to 155. And the great news is that we don't have pesky old USADA to worry about anymore. You know what I mean? Those weight cut misses of the past. I think we're going Chidi and Jokuwani style, clean and easy, baby. We're making 155 without a worry. It's been a worry in the past. 2 separate times he's missed. He's had to pull out of other fights. I'm just saying his frame. What, he's 6'3", dude? That's crazy for 155. That's nuts.
I'm not worried about it this time. And you know what, dude? You know how shitty you are at nicknames? I got one for Elves. Ready? Two-Face. Boom. Because in the Guram fight, literally, Two-Face. You suck, bro. It's all good. Anyway, I like Joel Alvarez here, round 1, round 2. It's his win condition. I think Elves was literally about to die versus Guram. I think he's gifted one versus Kurchusky, who's terrible, but is also TB's best friend. And he was also gifted one versus Zubaira Tukugov, because that's a fucking robbery. So he's finally getting his punishment here, and Joel Alvarez will make weight. I'll give you a quick one. How you like that? Liam, what do you got?
Yeah, I think we're going to disagree on this one as well, my brother. And it's not to say that I don't see that as like I agree with you. That's probably the path for Alvarez. I think that he can win the fight like that. And I respect Alvarez. He's a dangerous fighter. He's got a lot of great physical tools. But I always worry about these huge guys at the weight class because I could just tell you guys myself, like, I know what it takes for me to lose, a certain amount of weight or whatever it is to get down to these different weights. And I've wrestled most of my life at 54 to 65, essentially, like in that range. And so I kind of have felt a lot of people in these body types. And one of the things about the length that could be a problem, a detriment, is this guy is all upper body and his hips are right there, which is why he gets taken down so frequently in the UFC. He's got a 0% takedown defense rate. Now, he's also very confident in his ground game. So he's like, come on down. I got a guillotine and whatever. Guys, by the way, I do a lot of the same things myself in terms of looking for the guillotine when people enter. That's a great way to set it up if you've got a good one. The thing about it is you look through his wins in the UFC, and he's got Mark Diakese no longer with the promotion, but that's probably his best win on paper. His other wins in the organization, most of these guys are retired from mixed martial arts fighting. Joe Duffy never fought again after they had their tussle, right? And basically Joe was getting hit with a couple leg kicks and was like, I don't need this shit in my life no more. Shot in for the worst takedown ever. He's a boxer, and then he got submitted. So it wasn't a great look from Irish Joe Duffy there. Then you look at some of the other fights, like Danilo Belluardo has some success getting to the ground. Then he wraps up the arm behind him and gets him with the TKO. I mean, it was sick, but it was also a little bit gimmicky. Thiago Moises, we've learned that Thiago Moises can be broken. He can be wilted if you get after him early, you pressure him. But Joel Alvarez exposed that about him. We didn't know that before. So now we've seen a bunch of guys go back to that game plan, make it work. Benoit Saint Denis, I bet him at -110 against him because I was like, we've seen this game plan come to pass once before. And that was the only time where I laid chalk against Alvarez and then I lost the bet, right? I also was huge on Arman Tsarukyan against this guy. And I remember fight week, everybody told me, they're like, dude, Tsarukyan, no way. They're like, this guy's so big, this guy's so long, he's huge, he's awkward. And I was like, I hear your points, but I just think that if he gets taken down, he's probably going to get his guard passed. This guy's not a bum in jiu-jitsu. He's not going to give up the first guillotine. I was like, if he gets him to the ground, he's going to pass the guard. And then what happens to this guy if he gets extended in a fight where he's on his back? And he got assaulted violently in that fight. I bet the inside the distance, he was getting ripped apart with elbows. He's a very tough man, right? He never once was like, get me out of here. But he was just getting beat up really bad. And the problem is with all that length and size, it's good when you're on top. It's good when you can make it work from the guard and stuff like that. But once you're in really negative control positions, it makes it easier to cross feet underneath you, to get in a dominant mount, hips down, start crossing your arms across you and just battering you with elbows. And Elves Brener, if there's one thing we've learned about him, you literally need to kill the man because as long as he's still conscious, he's throwing back, he's looking for takedowns. And Mirtabek Orobai is somebody I really respect. I bet him in his UFC debut, short notice, up a weight class. I bet him by sub there, and he made it look easy against Uros Medic. He cannot finish this guy, Elves Brener, when he had great positions. He had great takedowns. He hurt him badly on the feet at one point early with a strike. He didn't even realize it. Orobai's power is such that he didn't realize he hurt him. He's like, all right, I'm wrestling. I'm doing my thing. But Elves Brener just finds a way to like keep fighting in these fights where he gets hurt, then he goes for a switch. He gets hurt, then he goes for a roll through. He just keeps you working at such an insane pace rate where Guram had some success, but I think people are talking about that fight that haven't rewatched it, honestly, because they're like, he watched him. He was beating him in every position. I'm like, did you guys rewatch the fight? He landed a few big shots that like punctuated rounds, but they were going beat for beat. He took him down multiple times in that fight, got on top, and he's a freak, dude. Like Elves Brener with blood running down his face is still chasing finishes in the third round. So Joel Alvarez, a guy who's never proven he can win a decision. He's only been to one. And Elves Brener, he's been to a few. He hasn't gotten them all to go his way. But the ones that mattered at the UFC level, he's gotten them to go his way. He's a young guy. I think he's got takedown upside here against a guy who doesn't defend takedowns. And as long as he can defend that first guillotine, I think he's passing the guard. I think he might get to some good positions here and really test Joel Alvarez because Joel Alvarez dealt with injuries. He's dealt with a lot of inactivity, canceled bouts, visa issues, a lot of different things. Elves Brener is a guy who always says yes to tough challenges, and he keeps coming up aces. So for me, at plus 150, he's a hard guy to ignore. Most of the time, he's been plus 500 and all that. Last time out against Orobai, was the first time he failed to cash. And he was a minus 200 favorite against Krzyzewski, sent him to the land of wind and ghosts. Look at how Krzyzewski did, even when he was, torched on cardio, had nothing left, still didn't get put away by Kurt Hollabaugh. So for me, I just think Elves Brener, when you talk about guys that are going to go out there and fight hard for your money, I think he's proven that beyond a shadow of a doubt. So whether he wins or loses, I can't tell you. I do think Alvarez is a worthy, dangerous finisher, but I just think based on how the wins have aged, hasn't proven as much to me. I think he gets a lot of credit for the quality of losses, but he got beat within an inch of his life by Sarukian. So I think that in this fight, Elves Brener is going to give him a fight. I think it's going to be an honest scrap.
Yeah, I understand the perspective on that. I'd say where I envision the fight taking place the most early on is from distance. I think Brener typically wants to strike. I think Alvarez doesn't shoot takedowns. It's more, well, if my opponent's going to go for them, then great, we'll go there. I think when this fight ends up in the clinch, we're going to see like that Guram fight where he created the most damage towards the end of round one was with that clinch elbow. That's something that Alvarez does so well. And I think Brener is one of those guys that kind of reminds me of like a Charles Jourdain where it's like, oh, well, he's never been knocked out. He's never been knocked out. I say, well, he's been knocked down plenty. And like when you're fighting a guy that probably doesn't actually physically belong in the weight class and he's won every single one of his fights by finish, I think it's for a reason. And I know the Diakese one is a little bit sketchy of how it plays out with the headbutt before all the action.
That's a great analogy.
But in that fight, you can still see where Alvarez is starting to like potentially show signs of slowing down. I think he was going to be up 2-0 on the scorecards regardless there. I mean, I could be wrong. We never got the second round judged, and I didn't go back to look at what they scored round one. But Alvarez, like his striking from distance, while he might not have the best defense, he's going to have an absolutely gigantic, 5-inch height, 5-inch reach advantage. And he's going to want to strike from distance to start. He throws nice kicks. And when Elvis, or whatever you want to call him, when he closed the distance, I feel like that's when the elbows from the clinch are going to start to open up. And we've seen the chin tested quite plenty. It's just we've never seen the guy with the type of front headlock series to take advantage of someone that's hurt and the long limbs to get these chokes finished and the body positioning, the long legs to scoop up a Darce or Anaconda from different type of angles than a shorter fighter might be able to. That's what leads me to Alvarez finding a TKO or a sub within. It's Joel round one, round two. You can't play the money line. To Liam's point, if this fight's going into round three, I don't care what the fight looked like to that point, I'm smashing the live odds on Elvis Brener. That's the moral of the story.
Well said.
All right, we're moving on. We've got Atomic Alonzo Menafield versus the professional Azamat Murzakanov, a nickname so bad that even TV couldn't have come up with that. So, Mr. Atomic Alonzo Menafield, well, he comes in with a bit of the size and probably a bit of like the wrestling upside. I mean, he comes in with zero of the chin or fight IQ upside. And he's got Pat Barry in his corner, so he probably doesn't have good life advice coming his way either. It's not ideal, you know? So, Murzakanov here, I think what wasn't ideal about his last performance was watching him kind of slow down versus Jacoby, get hurt in round three, and Jacoby pulling a low IQ maneuver to go and wrestle. It's just, I don't think Alonzo Menafield survives the type of onslaught from a striking perspective that Jacoby somehow found a way to get through in rounds one and round two. We've seen Menafield's chin tested time and time again by guys with the better timing, ones that southpaw, especially like OSP fight. I know that OSP was the bigger guy in that one, but Azamat's going to make it up on the speed side of things. And if we are seeing round three, once again, maybe there's some things to consider and something's gone horribly wrong. I just think Murzakanov he's going to win this fight from my perspective. I think he's the way more talented striker. And for Menafield to get in close to do what he's going to want to do to clinch and slow down this fight, because that's who the new Alonzo Menafield is. It's not a knockout striker. It's a clinch wrestler and someone that actually looks for a bit more active wrestling in general. So,
sorry, did we both watch his last fight? Didn't he just run forward and die?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, what do you think he was going to try to do there?
Wasn't he trying to knock his block off?
And then probably level change and like get to
that's the Pat Barry game plan for you.
I'm just saying,
you
man.
can storm across that cage and you get after him.
The Czech Congo approach.
I got him.
Yeah, I guess. And yeah, I mean, he is generally unreliable. So I feel like if you're getting the absolute best,
professional.
no, he's definitely not the professional. However, the professional had to pull out of his last fight, right? That's something that needs to be mentioned.
He's had to pull out of. He pulled it out of the Khalil. No, Khalil pulled out of the last fight. No, it was Murzakhanov with pneumonia, and then he also withdrew versus Ozdemir. He withdrew his last 2 fights.
Yeah, he's probably one of those guys that's just a bit too much of a tank, but he's definitely got a little extra. Like Love Handle Scouting MMA noticed that he definitely had a little extra jiggle going on. So just wanted to put out there for the world that maybe Murzakhanov with the proper, nutrition, diet, exercise plan, meeting with the right, supplements potentially. Like could 185 have been in somewhere in his lifetime? And I don't know. He looks more built like a Ninja Turtle from that regard. So I think it would have been hard. So I think he did the right thing. He has the speed advantage. He's the southpaw. He's the more crisp striker. I love the way he doubles up on his lead hand sometimes, and he switches stances beautifully when he's landing power. So I mean, I got him by knockout round 1, round 2. I was gonna lay a parlay with my favorite nickname on the card. Guru talked me out of it, but I might still get back there because I feel like it needs to be done. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. I don't know why I want to choose parlays this
What do you
week,
think,
but
Love Handles? How's he look?
oh damn, he's actually that's slightly less jigglage than I saw in the last effort, but that's before he rehydrates,
Yeah.
So Guru, did you have anything different on that fight there?
No, I mean I like Azamat. I think Alonso's just a gigantic fade. I just don't really trust him. I like the over 1.5 as well. I think it takes a little bit of time, but Azamat could definitely. Yeah, I like Azamat round 3 decision. I think Alonso will be a little bit more tentative this time because I mean, how the fuck can you come out the same way after getting obliterated like that? So overs are interesting. Azamat round 3 decision. Cool.
I'll do the Carlton dance as you finish up.
That's the worst Carlton. That's the worst Carlton dance I've ever seen.
I'm not getting up. So that's the best we could do.
All right. What do you got?
I think that for me, Alonso Menafield is coming back way too quickly. He got finished in the first round like 2 months ago, and if I was his coach, a friend, if I was the athlete, I would not be getting back in there within 6 months. But in any case, here he is, and I feel like for Murzakhanov, he's a guy that's old enough in the division. He needs to go right now. And I do think he's got the firepower to take out somebody like Menafield. Menafield has struggled with southpaws in the past. I think if he operates out of a southpaw stance, the left hook is there. We've seen Alonso Menafield get felled with that multiple occasions now in the UFC. OSP, the last time he looked like a knockout puncher was putting this guy down easily, and I bet him as an underdog in that spot. And I'm just thinking when I look at the line, like, do I want to bet Murzakhanov at chalk? I mean, not really, but do I think he wins this fight? Yeah, I think that even if he's losing the fight, eventually he's going to go, all right, flying knee, like just do something crazy and just kill Alonso. And that's just how I feel about it. I think in the wrestling, he's probably a little bit better. I think in the physicality department, he's probably a touch behind. But I think that in terms of the striking mechanics, I like how he operates a little bit better. I think he's a little bit more sound defensively, and I don't think he's as much of a head case. So overall, I think Azamat wins the fight.
Azamat round 3 decision plus 220.
I don't know if we get that far, brother. If we got to round 3, something's gone wrong, probably. I like round 1, round 2 knockout, most likely. But Menafield's chin coming back too soon. Murzakhanov's timing and speed. I feel like you weren't listening to our breakdown. I don't know.
Just think he takes time. I mean, he doesn't even finish Devin Clark until round 3. He goes to decision versus Dustin Jacoby, rocks him twice. Tafon and Chukwu, it takes the flying knee in round 3 after losing the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, we've seen Alonso not necessarily be able to take it, though.
Oh, pause. But yeah, obviously. but you've also seen him able to take it versus Jimmy Crute or whatever.
Against Jimmy Crute? What?
The second fight that he wins. What do you mean? What are you laughing
Jimmy
at?
Crute's not a striker.
He was. He was.
Alonso Menafield was the one that was killing Jimmy Crute on the feet. You're misremembering. And Jimmy Crute's not even that guy on the feet. That's a bad argument.
No, he's not.
That's as bad as one of my nicknames. Anyways, Muhammad, the UAE warrior, Yaya versus Maui Fernandez.
That's a good one.
That's a good one, right? All right,
Just because it rhymes doesn't have to. You didn't do anything lame with name. Like, you didn't go low hanging.
Also, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Rhyme.
I hope you guys got that. Maui. All right, shout out Kid Cudi. But we got the Mohamed Yaya really just here for a participation award. The UAE Warrior showing up as we're coming into Abu Dhabi. I mean, the Trevor Peak experience, man, it just didn't go so well for Yaya in his debut. And I get it. I mean, Trevor Peak I feel like he just didn't quite know how to handle all that activity, should I say. But Fernandez here, he's going to be a bit of a quick twitch kickboxer. Quick twitch kickboxer. Sorry, that was a tough one. And someone that has a decent level of grappling. And in this fight, I don't think he's fighting someone that's going to actively use their wrestling. So you got to imagine, I mean, minus 395 here. Yaya has been finished in multiple appearances in his career. It's like, well, given the line and given what Fernandez has shown from a finishing perspective, like watching Trevor Peak swing missiles at your head when he's the shorter guy and you're kind of like dancing around is one thing. Whereas if Fernandez is kind of setting up a combo and throwing up a head kick that you don't see coming, could be a different thing. And even Mohamed Yaya is getting dropped within like the first 45 seconds just because like doesn't quite know how to handle what Peak's bringing towards him. And Peak just ends up using a bit more of the physicality and wrestling as the fight goes on. But Fernandez here, he's going to match the height and reach. So it's not like he's going to be making anything up on the back end and having to cover, like, you know, I should say from Liam's end, this would be the anthropomorphic advantage. He's not having to deal with that in this spot. So for Cowie, I think he should win. It's just a minus 395. And for a guy that's 0-1 in the UFC, it's just kind of I'm not going to fade someone that I think could be faded at a later point with a fighter that I don't think is worth it. Like Yaya at plus 310, it's like the only reason I think he might be worth it is where he's from. I don't think I've really seen it from a talent perspective per se, but Fernandez at minus 395, I mean, I don't love it. So I think this is going to be one of those fights where I probably have a pass on it.
Yeah, I mean the line itself, where you're at. I mean, there's unless you find some, you know, golden prop, which you got to look to somebody like Liam to find it. Unless you find the golden prop, I do think that this is a total pass spot. I mean, you've got such a little fight sample from both guys, not only in the UFC but basically their whole career. You know, Fernandez is somebody that, you know, has good, you know, decent, you know, range management and has got a nice head kick, but, you know, questionable competition and throws one strike at a time. And, you know, obviously had a tough fight versus the Casey there, which, like Liam said earlier, is no longer in the promotion. So that's not necessarily the best loss to have. But Yaya, there's nothing that Yaya has shown that says that he's going to grapple to any sort of level or frequency that the Casey does. So I like Fernandez here. I think if Fernandez gets it done, I mean, he probably just finishes him at the end of the day. Like, let's just be honest. I like Fernandez round 1, round 2. That's where I'm going. What do you like, Liam?
I think that this is a clear dogger pass for me. When I look at Kawe Fernandez, first of all, he comes into the UFC and, you know, he had a winnable opponent in Diakese. Diakese kind of likes to rely on that wrestling grappling these days. You know, he came into the UFC as a supposed striker. Things didn't go his way. In a couple of those striking battles, he was like, screw all that. I'm going for takedowns. And that's part of the reason he got cut was his boring style more than anything else. But the Kawe Fernandez fight, I mean, he takes him down. Kawe Fernandez works back up to his feet fine. And you're like, okay, this guy's got something to offer. And then he takes him down again. And that was the end of that. You know, Kawe Fernandez just stopped getting up from that point forward, I felt like. And he just seemed like a pretty exploitable guy. You get one takedown on the guy, the round or the fight could be over shortly thereafter. And you look at Mohamed Yaya, he was pretty embarrassed about his last performance. But frankly, I don't know that Trevor Peak wouldn't beat Kawe Fernandez, right? Like, I think Kawe is a more technical fighter than Trevor Peak, but I think if round 2 starts with Trevor Peak and Kawe Fernandez, I trust that Trevor Peak could probably go a little bit deeper into the fight, push a little bit harder. And I just didn't like what I saw in terms of the fire from Fernandez in that fight. It's a UFC debut. Maybe he underperformed in that spot, but I could forgive you losing to Trevor Peek, who's kind of a madman and like the exact last guy most people would want to fight, and a guy that can finish and knock people out. He doesn't have very technical striking, but he's at least dangerous. He's going to try and kill people. And meanwhile, Kawe Fernandez, he's got a couple wins by knockout. That's his danger factor. I think coming in here, he's going to have a nice, body kick, a couple of decent opportunities. Maybe he could submit him in the first round when he's fresh. But I do think that he feels like a guy who could slow down in terms of cardio over the course of 15 minutes, which we saw in his last fight. He seems like a guy who's exploitable to the takedown. He seems like a guy who, despite having a really long background in fighting, you look at a lot of his wins, guys, they're fraudulent. You just look and like the guy was 10-1 and you're like, wow, what a win. And then you click on it. He's 11-10 now. It's like, oh, he hasn't won a fight since, right? It's just like, there's been a couple of guys that he's fought that aren't for real. Is Muhammad Yaya fighting killers? No, but I think they're literally trying to find like anybody on the roster where they're like, hey, like who can this guy possibly beat? And that is Kawe Fernandez. It's still not an easy call, but give me Muhammad Yaya at the price relative. I just think I can't trust Kawe Fernandez as far as Mark Diakese could throw him.
Fair enough. That's what I was saying. I think I'm taking the pass option here, but I was like trying to do the best I could to find a reason to take the dog. I couldn't quite get there, but I respect it, man. You are the ballsiest of dog hunters, and that's what keeps you at the top of the game here, for real. Really respect your approach. So we got our next fight. This is the most electric name in the whole UFC. We've got Big Meal Shamil Gaziev versus Lord Kong Don'Tale Mayes. And my oh my, is that looking like a big meal for Shamil this week. Don'Tale coming in with a 2-inch height advantage, a 3-inch reach advantage. It's just, what's he going to do with it? That's my question in this fight. Does Don'Tale really want to be there against this guy? Because is he going to survive the type of onslaught round one that Jairzinho survived? I mean, Shamil was willing to run face first into the octagon fence, trying to take a bite out of Jairzinho within the first 1 minute of the fight. So I'm curious what Don'Tale's reaction is going to be if this fight starts getting violent early, and if he is one of those guys that you can trust him to turn the tides. And if not, are we getting a tentative, boring Shamil coming off of a gas out approach in his last fight? It was a main event at the Apex where it was supposed to be in Saudi originally, right? And they move it to the Apex. So now he's fighting in Abu Dhabi. He's getting the guy from Jackson Wink MMA, Don'Tale Mayes, to come on over. And, as early in the week, I parlayed Big Meal Shamil and I put it with Azamat Mirzakhanov, and I was going to call it a day. And I have a very good friend of mine that helped me beat some line movement. But now I'm sitting here and I'm like, God damn it, I got to cash out on Mr. Lord Kong. And I'm going back to the well. We're doing Big Meal Shamil and Azamat Mirzakhanov to have just about as dangerous of a time as you possibly could have. That's basically my goal.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. So it was me kind of reading the tea leaves in terms of some line movement, which did dip that way and then has now kind of come back. But then also, pre-looking into anything, I'm like, okay, it's wide. And of course, I'm salty about picking Shamil over fucking Jairzinho when you shouldn't do that. It's so silly. So, that's my own biases and my own mistakes. So looking at it now, the question is, and this is the only question, is can Don'Tale Mayes defend a takedown? And after watching the way that Jairzinho continues to defend a takedown and defend himself and pushes Shamil, I just don't think Mayes can do that. I just think he's a pushover more.
He did tear John Jones' shoulder, right? The pectoral muscle stuffing it down.
No, and it's really funny because when you look at Don'Tale Mayes, I'm like, can Don'Tale Mayes defend a takedown? I'm like, I'm so unsure. And then you look at his career, it's like, okay, so he gave up 3 to Cyril Gahn, 2 to Rodrigo Nascimento, and this is the best one. He gave up 3 to the GOAT, Hamdi Adelawab. So
that guy's legit the GOAT. He was on so many steroids in that fight too. It's not even funny.
Dude, I sent you. He got suspended again.
Oh,
I sent you that yesterday.
Yes. That's he was on so many steroids. Kristen, what's going on? I forgot to shout you out before. Don't know if we've seen you in the chat. Appreciate Mushroom bringing you over to the channel, and hope you did the right thing and subscribe because we appreciate you joining us.
To make a short story long, I'm off Don'Tale Mayes here. I like Big Meal Shamil to get it done early. He's at home. Round 1, round 2, big meal, Shamil. Otherwise, you might as well hold on to the dog ticket because it's going to get sketchy. What do you think, Liam?
Hate this fight. I think both these guys stink. I think that Dante Mays particularly stinks. Just in terms of I think he has no upside in the division long term. I think on the other side, Shamil Gaziev is a guy that, they tried to rush up the card. I put out a tweet the other day. I said, this MFer down bad for real, right? He goes from a main event in the Apex Center to the 5th fight on the card in Abu Dhabi. He's buried on the prelims, but I think that they're trying to give him a winnable fight, get back on track. Lord Kong has been around for a long time, but he's been finished by most of his quality opponents. Some of his other fights, he ends up in really bad situations and positions, like the Hamdi fight. You could say, oh, Hamdi popped for drugs. Yeah, but he also fought like a complete bonehead and flat-backed himself on more than one occasion. So I just think that Dante Almeida is kind of an idiot, right? And I don't mean that disrespectfully. Again, talking about fight IQ. Fight IQ, you could have a great fight IQ. You could be a Rhodes Scholar outside the cage, but this guy doesn't have a good fight IQ in my view. He also got submitted in comical fashion by Cyril Gane, who then went for the same move against Francis Ngannou, thinking it was real, and ended up flat on his back in a main event. So I just think that you look at this guy, Dante Mays, I don't trust his grappling. At the end of the day, I think that there's some exploitable tendencies there. I don't trust his striking. Knocking out Andrei Arlovsky doesn't tell me much. He's got some power. I think that Big Meal Shamil is probably a slightly better athlete. But I think that neither one of them is like a blow your hair back athlete. And I don't feel very bullish on this fight. I just think last time out against Rosenstrike has had a lot of guys try and wrestle him proactively lately. And he is a guy with that death touch on the feet. So to last 4 rounds of them, not a horrible look. And I think for Dante Mays on the other side, I've just never been impressed by the guy.
Fair enough. I think we're lined up to see, basically the Russian version of Grimace, Big Meal Shamil, take a big bite at a Lord Kong in this.
Don't you dare compare Grimace to Big Meal.
They've got the same body shape.
Grimace is a legend around these parts, and we will not tolerate any Grimace slander on this podcast either. Sorry,
no slander. They have a beautiful body. Beautiful body. Yes, giant.
Gaziev, round 1, round 2, plus 130. Does that tickle your pickle at all?
I actually would like a taste of that. I could take.
Would you like a taste, Liam? You want a little taste of that? A little taste of that?
Jesus Christ! All right, we've got the Georgian Viking Guram Kutateladze versus the epidemic, not the pandemic. Don't be worried. We've got Jordan Vucenic coming in here on short notice, up a weight class versus Guram Kutateladze. Watching back the Vucenic tape, high-level grappler. The guy's got solid Muay Thai on the feet. He's definitely athletic. But what I think for all the great makings he has offensively, he leaves a bit to be desired on the defensive aspect of things. The type of switches that were being hit on him in the Paul Hughes fight is Guram is definitely a higher level than that. So what I do think is that Vucenic does have really good durability. He did just fight a couple weeks ago, took absolutely 0 damage, seems to be ready to take a fight on a moment's notice in general. So I think the survivability aspect, like Guram, he's a killer. He looks crazy, but at the end of the day, in the UFC, he's not been the most prolific when it comes to actually putting the fights away. So for Guram here, I think he could run into some early troubles, potentially, or he could just be cruising, but I think Vucenic is going to be able to withstand a bit of damage here. So if you do a little same game parlay action of like a Guram and over 4.5 minutes or a Guram and over 1.5 rounds, I think you get just enough juice to avoid playing Guram decision at I think it's plus 110. So it's tough. You might not get all the way to the minus money that you're needing. So you got to play around a little bit, see where we can get to and see where you can find the best line. But I think that's the most likely thing that happens here.
Guram decision plus 125. I kind of lean if I'm going to do it, I kind of lean Guram round 3 decision minus 105. But even still, it's just I don't know. I almost feel a little priced out of it. Guram, to me, again, way higher level of competition. Look at those losses. The losses, you got to give him some leeway, right? Losing to Gamrot. No, the Gamrot fight is the one he wins, right?
Right. That's the fight he wins. And it's
right.
When that guy's fully prepared, I mean, even that was a short notice fight for him, but like he has
Right.
cardio, you know?
Yeah. So, and like to me, like, oh, this Vucenic guy, he's gonna come grapple Kutateladze. It's like, bro, Demir Ismagulov went 0 for 6 on takedowns. And like again, he back to the Elves Brener fight. Like he had Brener dead. If it's a different ref other than Chris Tione or Guram being a little silly, like the fight's over there and then he was done. And then Vucenic has a decent level of competition other than Paul Hughes, who's obviously very good. He fought Morgan Charrier, just split decision because Charrier is the king of the split decision. And up a weight class here, basically. I know his last fight is against Adrian Kepa, which is also up a weight class. But Adrian came down to fight him there. So it's just like a weird fight in general for them to make. And I just don't necessarily love it. So I'm on Guram, but how can you? It's a get right spot. It's probably a get right spot. And all right, I'll leave it at this. He's been training in Abu Dhabi like consistently for a while now. So it's not home for him, but this is home. It's a hometown fight for him. So he's gonna get the win here. What do you think, Liam?
Yeah, I was a little bullish on Vucenic pre-tape, and I had mentioned as much on my guy Clint show this week. And unfortunately, the more I ran the tape, the more I was a little bit concerned with the angle because he's coming in on short notice. He's at 155 pounds here, and he's a guy that has been out-wrestled, out-muscled, out-hustled, and beat up at 145 before by Paul Hughes. And I think Paul Hughes is a really good fighter, but I also don't know that he deserved that first decision against him. I thought that was a super close fight, could have went either way. And I thought that the more recent fight, I mean, I was surprised that fight wasn't stopped on a few occasions. He's a tough guy. He's willing to get damaged and keep coming forward. Both these guys are very Caucasian. I mentioned on my Roto Grinders preview, and that means that I would not be surprised if either one of them gets busted open with cuts, elbows. They both like to elbow off the break consistently. And on top of that, Vucenic, you mentioned it. He's very offensively potent. He throws heavy shots with the hands, but he's there to be hit defensively. He's kind of a liability, I would say, in the striking defense. That's why he likes to wrestle and grapple so much. I think his process in terms of the wrestling and grappling isn't great. But what I do think is better than Guram, what I think is his like one defined advantage in this fight is his cardio. I think Guram is a guy that can fight really well for about 8 minutes, and everything beyond that is a little bit more of a hope and a prayer. And honestly, even in the other moments, like if he doesn't land a big one defining shot, then he will fight very close oftentimes in rounds. Like he'll just leave it to be a very close decision. He's won win in the UFC he doesn't think he deserved, right? He went out there and apologized. I'm so sorry. Apologized to his opponent, ducking his head, giving the bow. So he could be 0-3 in the UFC, staring down the barrel of a minus 250 price tag when he's been very inactive. He's been struggling to make it to the cage. Those are the downsides, the risks. But I also said on that show, and I want to correct it because some people were giving me grief in the comments, but they were saying, hey, you said that you can't evaluate his talent. All right, yeah, he's a very talented guy. I could say that. But again, I think that his talent doesn't necessarily match his results. Sometimes that's just the case in MMA, right? There's guys that have all the skills and abilities in the world, but the results are less than the sum of their parts. And so far, that's been the Guram Kutateladze story. He's fought tough guys. He's come up short a couple of times in fights that were winnable. This seems like a winnable spot against a short notice opponent. But I do think that the Vucenic angle is late in this fight. I think he's going to lose round one at a pretty decent clip here. I think Guram's the faster guy. I think he's going to start hot. I think he typically does that. I think he's going to come out throwing heavies, and I think Vucenic is there to be hit. But I think the longer Vucenic can extend this fight, the more chance that Guram falls apart. Because honestly, I don't think Elves Brener hit him with a shot that ended his night. I think he was just having enough of that fight. And Elves Brener, not being willing to go down, not being willing to back up, not being willing to like wrestle with him and get tired. He just kept walking him down until he broke mentally. And I think that Vucenic showed in that Paul Hughes fight, you got to kill him. If you just hurt him, if you just put him in bad situations and then try and grapple and these things, he's going to try and stay in the fight, stay disciplined, and stay defensive. I think his defense on the ground is better than on the feet. So for me, Kutateladze by knockout in the first couple rounds is how I would look at his side if I was over there. And meanwhile, on the other side, I think that Vucenic I think he could also win a decision, to be clear, but I think that's going to be what's like the most expected outcome here. So it's probably marginal value. But for Vucenic on the other side, I think a late submission is not out of the question, just because we've seen he's a guy that pursues it and normally gets it in round 2 and round 3 after he does some damage to the calf, after he does some damage on the feet. He then goes for the takedowns and gets the finish. And I think that he's a young guy with a huge following. He could sell out an arena show in Cage Warriors territory, if y'all know what I mean. So the UFC wants to have this guy under contract, but maybe his future's at 145. At 155 on short notice, it's a tough ask. But by the way, guys, who's been in the cage more recently? Vucenic. It's been over a year since Guram has competed, since that Elves-Brener fight where he got stopped. Meanwhile, Vucenic has been staying active on the regional scene. So in terms of who's peaking right now, I honestly think that's a toss-up.
Good question. Good question. It would be interesting. It would be cool to see Vucenic win. Shout out to Danny. Appreciate you checking in, man. It would be cool to see him win. I think the upper weight class is where he might not be able to play out as much of his grappling, and it could turn into a bit of the size advantage on Guram's end. But like Liam was saying, if this fight extends late, oh man, could we be seeing that sub angle coming around? So here we go. Coming on to our next fight, we've got Victoria's Secret, Dudakova versus Sam Hughes. Should be an absolutely great matchup. Victoria's Secret here, I feel like the secret is that she's not that great. There's
That's
I don't know. There's
it's good.
All right, no, but seriously, I think what stood out to me is that when she gets the type of striking battle that she wants, where she gets space, she gets time, she has the size advantage, that it definitely plays out in her favor. It's just Sam really isn't going to give her any space to do what she wants. And Yasmin Jauregui was such a great fighter in every single aspect of the game, like clinch, grappling, takedown defense, being the more physical fighter. Like Dudakova, I just don't think she really has what it takes over 15 minutes. When there's like, I mean, Sam Hughes is like what happens when you take, you have the awesome tomahawk steak and there's the dog at the side of the table. They're just like waiting for you to give it to them to go to town. And it's like, that's Sam Hughes the second she sees that you're slowing down in any marginal aspect of the fight. Her neck, it's way too thin to actually be choked out. And she's going to cheat a little bit if she can to like save herself. Dudakova, I hated what I saw from her, like from her back. In fact, she resorts to grabbing gloves and throwing 2 illegal up kicks to get back to her feet against Jinyu Fry at the end of round 2. And the ref kind of like warning her about the gloves. It was kind of already too late. She already regained all of her position to get to a place where she could stand up. So, and then Dudakova's throwing like 2 flying headbutts as well that kind of get talked about as like clash of heads. But it's like Jinyu Fry is way more like composed when she's fighting in the pocket, and Dudakova just did not look like she liked how it was going in the times where she wasn't having success. Now, Sam Hughes, she could just take too much damage at the start of this fight before she gets going. Jesus Christ, Glimbot, that's a little sketchy, but that's kind of hilarious. But yeah, I think ultimately Sam Hughes, man, it's worth the dog shot. You're getting the fighter that's just got more fight in him. And Dudakova, while she's fighting in favorable territory, there's just a lot about her game that I don't really enjoy here. And ever since the staph infection, she's scheduled to fight Gatto, pulls out of that fight. Poor Victor Henry suffered the effects of being on the same mat. But Guru, what do you got going on here in the Victoria's Secret versus
Sam? Have what Dudakova had going on, that's for sure. That sounds
Dudakova? Staph duty?
Have you ever had staph?
Nah.
Yeah, I've had MRSA before, brother. It's not fun at all. I'll leave it there. But yeah, it fucking sucks, and I don't wish it on anybody.
Probably would be even tougher if it was on your taint, huh?
No, it was not on my asshole. Thankfully,
it
it was on my shin. I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm saying it would have been tougher if it was, I imagine.
Yeah, I think I would have probably just, chosen to end my chapter right there. Close the book. That's enough for me.
That's enough. Yeah, I just feel that like Dudakova has this undeserved O and I just don't feel like they're doing. I don't think they're doing either the girl any favors. Like, I don't know. She just has to kind of overwhelm her, and I'm not necessarily convinced that she will. I do kind of like Sam uses cardio, where I don't necessarily trust Dudakova's. But we watched her in round 2 versus Jin Frey getting taken down, and she was just a turtle in 4 minutes. No idea to get up. Sam Hughes, yes, has she lost a million UFC fights? Absolutely. But she is, listen to this, she has 3 UFC wins, and she is 3-0 as long as she lands 1 takedown. So go out there and wrestle your heart out, Sam Hughes. Drop round 1, play possum, let her get a 10, like, let her rip and run on you there. And then just come out and land a bunch of takedowns round 2 and 3 and win. Love it. Dog money. Gotta have it. What do you think, Liam?
Fight I want to touch with a 40-foot pole for reasons aside from staff, but I think that for me, Sam Hughes is the kind of dog that I'd like to get behind. Typically speaking, she's going to go out there and fight hard for your money. She is a woman that has pretty solid cardio. She cheats her ass off if she needs to. She's really desperate to win these fights, so she's got a strong will to win. But on the other side of things, I just think that she's not very athletic. I think that Dudakova's probably got more long-term upside and marketability. I don't think the UFC cares if Sam Hughes lives or dies, and I don't say that disrespectfully to her. I just think that I'm evaluating the company, right? The company business goes on, right? Makayev can be cut. Sam Hughes, they don't know who that is. And I think that for Victoria Dudakova, they're trying to see if they can find, a way to market this girl, promote her, position her. She's got the right record. She's got the right look. She's got the right age. But ultimately, I just haven't seen that much skill and talent from her to blow me away. So I think it's just a clear pass fight for me.
Totally makes sense.
Totally,
yeah,
Kyle.
I feel like you could definitely get a better price on Sam after round 1 as well. So it's one of those spots to consider, I would say. I mean, I get it. It's just watching Dudakova have to push any sort of pace. I don't love it. And this is the other question. Has Hughes ever fought outside the U.S.? So, there's a lot to consider. And this is probably one of those ones where I don't need to put my money on it to find out.
Yes, you do.
There's probably another way to fade the narrative. So here we go. We got the Black Country banger, Jay Herbert. Versus not Ronaldo, we got Rolando the Machine Bedoya, also known with the Peruvian flute bands. So the question here is, Mr. Herbert, I mean, it seems like they just went out and found the absolute largest 155er that Bedoya could come down to his new weight classes, make his debut against. And with Jay Herbert, they were like, hey, man, we like this new clinching game set you got. How about you deal with a guy that is like real volume and is going to force you to fight? Because Herbert, I mean, he used to be known as like this big striker and all that. And I feel like I've seen a little bit more from him from like a wrestling and clinch standpoint recently, because he doesn't really want to find out what it's like to get touched on the chin. I feel like the Topuria fight kind of changed his outlook in a lot of ways. And even the Trinaldo fight, like, talk about comical. I mean, this guy's had an off button. It's not that I'm sure that Bedoya finds it. I just know that even if he can't, he's probably going to outland him 2-1 from distance. Way better overall pace numbers. And when you just watch the guy fight, he racks it up. Now, the concern is he's eating the bigger shots, and the optics aren't quite going his way in his debut against Song Kenan, where he has to fly across the world. So it's like multiple times Bedoya has done this across the world thing. I think he finally looks most prepared in a weight class appropriate for him, and that we're in like a great spot overall to take advantage of a dog shot where if Herbert really was this guy, a guru made this point, because I'm not sure if he's going to get there himself, but Jay Herbert should have been fighting on the Manchester card if the UFC really wanted to promote him as one of the up and coming British products here. Right. So Bedoya, I think, coming over here, he's got good training partner, also making the trip with him and Brener. So I trust that he's had some good looks in camp here. And I think Brener would pose more difficulty in sparring and overall than a guy like Jay Herbert at this stage. So I'm going to go ahead. We got in on early on the Bedoya train, a little bit slightly better line than now, but I think anything plus money here is value. So while the guru seems to be figuring out his headphones, Liam, what do you got cooking here?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you in terms of where the value lies in this fight. Listen, it could go either way. Jai Herbert's the more seasoned guy. He's fought quality level UFC opposition. But if you just look at the trajectory of their careers, I mean, you got a 36-year-old in a division that doesn't favor the young. And additionally, you look at how his results have turned out. He's done okay against guys that are undersized, right? Like guys coming up from 145. He landed a knockdown against Ilia Topuria. That's his claim to fame. It was a great shot. Showed his striking prowess. He's definitely a dangerous guy. But then Ilya stood back up, was able to take him down. And then once they, started engaging on the feet again, he hit him with maybe the most hellacious combination in UFC history, just put him in the absolute shadow realm. And you think about the fact that Jai Herbert's been knocked out pre-UFC. You think about the fact that Jai Herbert's been touched with strikes multiple times in the UFC, hurt badly. Dan Hardy lost his job trying to protect this guy's brain because he got knocked out so bad by a very ancient version of Trinaldo. And again, it's not to say that he has lost to bad guys. Like these are all quality fighters, but he's sustained a lot of damage. He's an older guy. And Rolando Bedoya on the other side, I think he's doing everything he can to try and maximize his opportunity in the UFC, right? He's a guy that was fighting at 170 because he came in on short notice actually against Chaos Williams, if you remember, all the way back there. And he went out there and put on a great fight. He was a plus 350 underdog. He closed like plus 150 live. Everybody didn't know, hey, how's this fight going to go? It was close. Chaos scraped it out. But Rolando Bedoya won the third round on every judge's scorecard. And so you look at that fact and you're like, man, this guy Rolando Bedoya went out there and he can win a third round against a tough guy who's gotten a lot of respect in Chaos Williams, who's a fringe type contender guy, maybe on the top 15, top 20 type end of the welterweight division right now. Then you look at the next fight against Song Kanan. Let's not forget that Song Kanan dropped Ian Gary as well. He's clearly got power in his hands. His biggest claim to fame has been his knockouts throughout his career prior to the UFC. So you look at Song Kanan, he went out there and lost the first round to Rolando Bedoya. But then what was the problem? Bedoya in that fight got dropped in round 2, got dropped in round 3. It's a tough fight to win when you get dropped in 2 of the 3 rounds. So I think that's what prompted him to say, you know what, let me get down to a better weight class. Let me get down to a weight class where I feel a little bit more, physically advantageous. And I think he can take down a guy like Jai Herbert potentially, because we did see him mix in several takedown attempts. And what happened? He would just run into the physicality of these guys and be like, not going to happen today. Just let it go. And I think that Jai Herbert, the same thing is true, right? He could try and mix in some takedowns. I think that would be wise for him, honestly, to justify this favorite price tag, try and get on top of this kid, test his ground game. We haven't seen that much in the UFC, but I think of Bedoya as a guy training with Shootbox Diego Lima, training with Elves Brener in the camp this week. They're both going out there together. So they've got a team, they've got a plan. They're both showing up in shape together after a good training camp. I think they're both peaking at the right time. They're both young guys, right? On the right side of 30. You got Jai Herbert on the wrong side of 35. And frankly, he's really struggled in the UFC to distinguish himself from his opponents. Even a great performance against Ludwig Klein, he ended up walking away from that with a draw. So I think of Rolando Bedoya, a guy who I'm pretty confident if this hits the scorecards, he'll have attempted well over 100 significant strikes. That's the kind of guy that I want at plus money more often than not. He's going to throw leg kicks. He's going to try and shut down the calf of Jai Herbert, and he's also going to throw punches down the middle and test the chin of Jai Herbert, who was knocked out by the not very heavy-handed Reese McKee in the first round regionally. So, I agree with you, man. Rolando Bedoya, live underdog.
Guru, are you back in business?
So the big deal here was that like the headphones I've been using for 4 years, that like back in the day when Beats were popular, I like Jukes the kid, I traded him like literally like 2 grams of weed for them. Like they've lasted a very long time. And they like just blew out all of a sudden, like as loud as possible in my ear. So I'm just kind of mourning the loss of that, and then also figuring out what the next set of headset or what the hell the next option is. But yeah, I'm on Rolando Bedoya. Again, I'm gonna be a lot.
See, he did it again.
Oops, I did it again. I mixed up your name, and I'll do it again later. Yeah, I got 1.5 units on Rolando Bedoya at plus 145. So I got a little bit of line movement there, but plenty of CLV to sit in the trash.
I just think at the end of the day, if Jai Herbert was any good, he would have been on the London card last week. I really think that kind of says all it needs to be said about Jai Herbert and how they feel about him. Good luck. Go take on Rolando Bedoya and basically save your job because you're fighting a guy that is obviously unranked in the division. He's never fought in it. So give me Rolando Bedoya. Jai Herbert is not very good at all.
Very nice. Kristen's here for the Brittany remix. Appreciate you for appreciating that. That shows that you're a real good sport. And here we go. We made it to the second most magical opportunity of the card. This is the time when all the fun happens because we've got the We're Coming for Your Brother parlay. Shara Bullet Magomedov and SD. I'll wear a turban when I'm in the desert. Dumas, Cedricus, and Shara. They're coming for that bag. It's just man, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Let me tell you that. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. It's just, I mean, when you actually start breaking down the fight, it's like, whoa. Dumas is being given the setup fight of a lifetime. But, I'm going to trust him to execute here. But, should he be trusted to execute? Is it really a financially smart decision to back Mr. Dumas at -218? Or are we just going to look like the dumbass ourselves as we back the Reaper, Cedricus Dumas, with the one and only Shara Bullet? It was a +109 parlay, but it's probably more danger than anyone can handle. So, tailor at your own risk. It just seemed like a fun one.
I feel like the best part of that parlay is, I mean, we won't get to recook it on BetMMA or whatever we do, but that's an easy one to recook throughout the night. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, all the stats, it's a fucking problem. We're like, oh yeah, Dumas, he can wrestle, he'll take him down. But have we seen Dumas do anything in 4 UFC fights? No. He could have taken down Otman Azaitar, and he just stares at him from a distance. Not a great look. The difference with Otman Azaitar and Dennis Tullian is Dennis Tullian's going to come forward with complete reckless abandon, and Otman Azaitar just kind of, again, just was happy to stand there and just trade from distance. I would love, you texted me earlier in the week, TB. I would love to have the video game controller on Dumas and just wrestle, because Dennis will tire out. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling like AIDS is afoot, but we're rocking with our boy Dumas. We're rocking with possibly the best photo I've ever seen in my life. So, Liam, tell us how dumb we are.
No, I won't tell you how dumb you are. I mean, listen, I think that if you look at Dumas's record in the UFC, it's not good. It's not terrible. I think that if you look at Tullian's record in the UFC, it's poor, but you can make some excuses for the losses. So they're both bad, right? But then, okay, what do we do with that? That becomes a more competitive, interesting fight. Cedric Dumas, I mean, getting submitted by Josh Fremd like that is pretty unforgivable based on Josh Fremd's subsequent grappling performances. He's been audited several times now in that phase in the UFC. But we did see Dumas at least make some improvements over time, right? Where he went from getting submitted by Fremd to going out there and dominating Cody Brundage. Is that a huge accomplishment? No. To not finish it, is it a little concerning? Yes. But did he go out there and out-wrestle a guy who's been wrestling way longer than him? Yes, he did. And he made it look easy because of his physical gifts. He's a long, big, tall guy. And also, from everything I've heard, he's very disciplined about his training in the jiu-jitsu room. So anything else in his life, I can't speak to. But I've heard that he's very consistent with that training. So if that's the case, I think he's probably the better guy on the ground between these two. I think Tullian is a very average ground player at best. He gives up a lot of bad positions. He's gotten submitted many times. So I think overall he's a negative grappler. When he's in bottom position, he's vulnerable to be passed, TKO'd from strikes on the top position. And then when I think about what he brings to the table, I mean, I think his path to victory is pretty straightforward here. Either sprawl and brawl, keep this upright, and, outpoint him to a decision, or go out there and knock this guy out. Because Cedric Dumas in his last fight got cleaned up pretty quickly on the feet. He got poked in the eye. They didn't do anything about it because, Rusuboev, a little bit more marketable, a little bit more aggressive there, and didn't really regard giving time for the referee, right? He just kept going in for offense. And I think that Tullian's the kind of guy where he's going to go out there, he's going to attempt big offense early. That is basically his whole win condition. And even against Kizriev and a couple of these guys, he's landed good shots. It's just the problem is he keeps getting taken down over and over. And I think that that's possible here. But I don't think Dumas is as committed a wrestler. When he did go out there, he took his Itar down. He controlled him for a round, but then he didn't go back to it. And for me, that could be a cardio sign, right? Cody Brundage is a complete cardio self-immolator. He fell apart in that fight early, broke mentally as well. So I don't think Tullian gives up as easily. I just think he's literally like bad and like gives up all these bad positions and gets beat up. But I think in this fight, you know, we've only seen Dumas go out there and earn decisions in the UFC. We've seen Tullian go out there and be in a bunch of fights where he lost inside the distance. Something's got to give here, I feel. And I think that Dumas probably gets his first UFC finish. Tullian just strikes me as cannon fodder as a long-term commodity. But overall, just hard to ignore the fact that Dumas, you know, hasn't justified these prices really in the UFC.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the decision line is at like plus 215, where you can get the round 1 or round 2 plus 190. And it really is a question of, like, to your point, if Tullian, Denise come on Tullian, it's like, yeah, I feel it's just not going to be his night. They're bringing in the cab driver. They've got him in the setup spot. So he might have had a couple of drinks. He might have been hanging out with Keith Peterson. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us, because what an absolutely fantastic evening. The chat was going wild. Feel like we saw a lot of new faces, a lot of familiar faces, but it wouldn't be the same without any of you, without all of you, I should say. So absolutely amazing time. Made a switch on our day of the week here. We're going to see what time is going to end up being positive. I know it says live every Wednesday on the graphic still. So, you know, we're doing our best here. Had a little change up in the work situation, stuff like that. So we're just trying to find the absolute right, you know, sweet spot timing for everything here. But make sure you guys do the right thing. Okay. Throw a like on the video. It helps us out so much. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Best bets, best guess, always free picks. Liam, before we pass it over to the guru to do his thing, what do you got going? Anything you want to plug for the fans here?
Yeah, I'll just let everybody know I'm going to be doing bets and banter later on tonight with a special guest. So stay tuned for that. And I'll have a link and everything ASAP on Twitter. So you can find me everywhere at Liam Picks Fights. God bless. Good luck. And I hope you guys win all your bets.
Thank you, Liam. And Guru, take us away, my friend.
Oh, shit. Liam, seriously, thanks so much for coming on, man. We love having you on. Literally, man, you're the GOAT. Hopefully one day we can link up for real and smoke some chronic, watch some fights, do some of that cool shit that people like to do. But everybody, seriously, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Wouldn't be the same, like you said, without us. Without you, obviously. Wouldn't be the same without us either. So, seriously, I'm fucking fried. New job's killing me. Trying to figure out the new time here. We're gonna get it together. Never, this gravy train will never stop. They can't hold us back. So seriously, we'll be back next week from the fucking Apex Arena for the rematch that everyone's been clamoring for. So make sure you're following my unbelievable co-host TB Scouting MMA over on Twitter, Verdict, Instagram, Picket, and Tapology. And you know what? Why not Bet MMA as well? And you can follow me, the Guru Scouting MMA, Twitter, Verdict, Instagram, Picket, Tapology, and Bet MMA. Can't say enough about Picket, though. What a great service. Guys, next week, Thursday it's looking. Don't know the time yet. Check out.